There's an artist on Twitter that posted some artwork and people were suspicious about their initial post, and then they dropped two speed paints and people's jaws were kind of on the floor. So let's delve into the situation, and before we get started, again, please don't send hate to any parties involved. So this all kicks off with a post by this artist Divya, and Divya writes, Sanji cooked some bread for Oriheim, commission, and it is some One Piece artwork. Oh my god, also on a complete side note, I have my cat in my lap right now, and he loves like getting pet and his butt slapped while in my lap. He's just drooling all over my leg. But this is the art piece in question. And as you can see, they're holding a tray with some biscuits or some sort of bread on it. And she's looking really, really excited. The art style is a bit unique. It's a very like painterly type style, but there are some oddities with the art piece that already look a little interesting. And a couple ones to note. The big one that's weird is that Sanji from One Piece is holding this tray, right? But they're not actually holding the tray because if you look at the four fingers, not the thumb, but the four fingers, if they're holding a tray, it would be, wrapped around the bottom of the tray, but it actually isn't. It's holding literally nothing. Only the thumb is actually making contact with the tray, which is already really interesting because if you're capable of this level of composition, lighting, and anatomy, I'm going to assume you're also able to draw the fingers around the tray instead of holding literally nothing. People in the comments were suspicious about this art piece. Somebody commented, what a marvelous AI masterpiece. Well done, Maestro. And this actually got ratioed. And the artist responds, okay. Another person says, W art. By the way, can you drop the time lapse of this drawing? I really want to learn from you to improve my art. And then the artist responds, DM. Another person wrote commission in quotes and yikes. And they put it into a AI checker and it flagged it as 98% likely to be AI generated. Again, these are like really hit or miss because look, AI trains off human artists. Sometimes it will flag legitimately human drawn works as AI generated, so it's pretty hard to determine this. But other people were zooming in onto the hand that is not holding the tray properly, and somebody writes new kind of hover hands. Again, this one is really interesting because it kind of looks like the character was actually holding something else, and then it kind of looked like they just like blocked it in using this bluish gray color to kind of color it out. So after everybody publicly was kind of like, yo, this looks like AI, etc., the artist came out to make their own statement. And Divya says, to all the people saying I used AI generated art, first of all, I don't. And some people are showing me how one says it's AI generated, but when I checked it, it says it doesn't. So how can two different AIs say two different things? I will upload a time lapse of all my progress from next time. The artist adds, I hope this will satisfy you all. And another person said, yo, you should post the Oriheim and Sanji timelapse though, since Oriheim looked weird in AI. And the artist responds, do you think I can magically generate a timelapse after creating it? I was not using Ibis Paints. So again, there are some art programs that will automatically record timelapses as you are drawing. Ibis Paint is one of them, Procreate is another. There are other programs that don't do this. They either don't record it at all, or you have to manually enable something before you start drawing. Clip Studio Paint is one where you have to enable it before you start drawing, and if you enable it after, it doesn't record it, obviously, because you finished drawing. And then the commenter says, so what was the software though? And they didn't get a response. So before we delve into the time lapse, let's take a look at more of this artist's artwork so we can get a more full image of this artist's art style because everybody has a different style. So this painterly style of anime characters is something this artist draws. This is a post from the beginning of May where they write, happy birthday, Monkey D. Luffy. And this is their Luffy art piece, which again contains the same anime but painterly style where the face has a very like an anime look to it, but the rest of the image is actually drawn with some pretty large brush strokes and there's not much like fine detail refinement. Again, that's completely fine. It's just unique to this person's art style, but that's something else that I wanted to add because that's something you can see here. But one thing I do want to add is that while this type of painterly style can be something that you will see within just an artist's art style, this has also been an art style that I have seen personally with other artists that later got called out for tracing art. I call this like the paint by numbers system. Again, if this is your art style legitimately and you hand draw it yourself, that's completely fine. Not saying that about you. I'm just referencing something that I've seen in other cases. This was like an art piece that I made for my friend's birthday many, many moons ago. What I mean by paint by number system is they take like an art piece that they're referencing and then they literally just color select and then they color in a little bit and then they color select another spot and then they color in a little bit more and they color select another spot and then they continue coloring it in. So it's like, yes, they did technically maybe put every brush stroke themselves, but it's not like the piece was officially drawn by them because it was made from color selecting and recoloring in tiny spots from an existing art piece, if that makes sense. That's what I jokingly call the paint by numbers because that's literally what you do in paint by numbers. But yeah, so that is something that I have seen before. And again, it's fine if you have like an art style where you paint with just a large brush and you don't like to refine the art style. That's totally chill, but just don't one by one select off of somebody else's artwork and you make zero alterations to it yourself. This is another example of artwork that they've done. This was an art piece of Rem from ReZero that they also posted. And the reason I'm showing you this is just so that we get an idea of what this artist's art style is before we take a look at the speed paint, because the speed paint breaks this whole thing apart. So Divya posts this speed paint and they write, started making a Luffy speed paint as people asked. Also, thank you so much for everybody who supported me, especially when there's like 50 plus people in my DMs asking me the same question the entire night. I was just explaining to everybody in group chat and DMs. And so this is the speed paint they posted, where it's not a completed speed paint at all. They draw in a stick figure and they start blocking in the torso, the head, and the legs, but they cut one leg off at the knee and the other leg, they cut it off at the foot. So we don't actually see the foot or the bottom of the other leg. Already there's so many issues because this speed paint looks nothing like the quality they're promising with the other artworks they have. Again, if this is your drawing naturally, that's completely fine. What we're debating is, did this artist legitimately draw this piece and the Luffy piece and the Rem piece? And if you look at these pieces, besides the weird hover hand for the tray of breads, the anatomy is very spot on for this piece. Same thing for the Luffy one, you know, it's a more complex pose, it's a low camera angle, and the anatomy looks very spot on for this Luffy piece as well. So why do we have like a speed paint like this where the anatomy of the legs are very off? Like this leg just looks completely crunched in, and then the lower leg is very narrow relative to the rest of the body. And judging by, you know, the fact that it's a lower angle, it probably would be larger just because things closer to the camera typically will appear larger. This is already looking really off. And then the artist continues, the best thing that happened yesterday was that I got to know people who I knew for years and still chose to get a banger when they got a chance, rather than asking me once before. But it's all good as I got to know about it at least. So referencing like fake friends, I guess. Once again, thank you so much to everybody. I went back to Ibis Paint X as it's the easiest to record on, but I don't need my laptop to make art. This is easy too. So I'm already confused because they said they don't use Ibis Paint. Some artists swap drawing programs. I do. Sometimes if I draw on my tablet, I'll draw on Procreate. If I draw on my computer, I draw on Clip Studio Paint. So maybe to go do the speed paint, you know, they're going to go back to their program. But come on, let's be honest here, okay? If you are trying to defend AI accusations, why would you drop the most half-finished, half-baked speed paint ever, right? This is not going to clear your name at all. Sure, maybe you don't have access to this speed paint for this piece specifically, but can you just redraw another art piece of the same level as this one? A fully rendered piece of this quality with 1 or 2 characters in some dynamic sunlight so that we can get a reference for your skill level? Because the skill level of this sketch in the speed paint, which again, they didn't even sketch it, they just block the body. There is no hair, there's no clothing, there are no eyes, nothing. This is not gonna clear your name. And again, I always find it so funny when like alleged AI fake artists, right, try to clear their name because like they do the most half-baked attempts ever in terms of speed paints, recordings, whatever, and they're always like, oh, this broke, that broke, whatever. Maybe there's a legitimate case, right, where something broke. But I feel like if you put yourself in the shoes of somebody who drew something legitimately and then you are falsely accused of using AI, you're gonna pull out probably every bell and whistle, everything you know to prove, like, hey guys, I didn't use AI because you did it, right? Here are the layers, here's a speed paint, here's me streaming the art. I'll do anything because I didn't use AI. This person didn't even try. They didn't even post a finished speed paint. Sorry, I just got back from EDC. This is just funny as hell. And people in the comments are not buying it. People are saying things like, girl, if you have such great art skills as you claim, this is not how your rough sketch should look like. Just give up. You are making it worse for yourself at this point. Another commenter says, you clearly know nothing about anatomy and proportions. Another person said, who even draws a wireframe like this? LMAO. So then the artist Divya doubles down and they write part 2. Also to everybody saying why I didn't reply at night. Like, bruh, am I gonna stay up the whole night? It was nighttime in my country. Like, the F? Good morning. Which also people were mentioning this artist's nationality while debating this. I don't think it's fair to bring in somebody's nationality as like an accusation as to this is proof. That's just you being racist, man. Don't do that. So they continue where they start drawing in details for Luffy. You are lying. You are lying. I'm just being honest here, okay? Come on, we have eyeballs. If you look at this sketch is that level of an intermediate artist, you know? But this sketch would not be done by somebody who had painted this because this is a pretty dynamic pose, interacting with the button, stuff like that. The anatomy is all correct here. Again, minus random hover hand going on. The anatomy is completely off here, right? This leg is chopped. This leg proportionally is like the same length as like the arm, which doesn't make sense because it's a leg, so it should be longer. Not to mention, again, the art piece has characteristics of somebody who's more of a beginner, etc. in art. There is like shakier feathering for the line work, which is also odd because if you think about it, this is a sketch with line art now. By the way, I want to add, they didn't draw the head and they also didn't draw the below the knee for the other leg. So weirdly, still have a really cropped version of the art, but all of their other art pieces don't have line art in it. There's no line art in the 3 images that I showed you, which are the 3 main art pieces on their page. So how come suddenly you're drawing with line art? And not to mention the line art is also, again, very shaky. It's very feathery, which is something that you would see in somebody who's less confident in their line work. My cat is trying to break into my room again. And the final question is, once again, why show a half-baked sketch if you're trying to clear AI accusations? Why not just show a full speed paint? Because this is still line art at best, choppy sketch at worst, right? This is not a completed piece at all. This is still not going to clear your name if you legitimately drew those other pieces. But going by the skill level of this sketch versus the other art pieces, there is no way in hell these were drawn by the same person. And people in the comments are not buying it. People are saying like, the way you're doing this sketch proves it. You didn't draw the earlier pieces. Another person says, my sketches and the way I go about them aren't great. But this, there's no logic behind any of the guidelines or what is put on top. I will stand corrected, sure, but for now, I can't see you drawing the previous pieces with this kind of foundation as a sketch, which I, again, agree. Every artist has their own process for sketching. As long as it makes sense to you, that's what makes sense. Sometimes the sketches look nasty, but you can cook out, you know, a perfectly beautiful looking finished piece. But again, also this person isn't showing us a speed paint for a finished piece. We literally only have a speed paint of a sketch to go off of. So that is what the public is going to judge you on because that's all you're providing people. And then the artist adds in a more finished version of the sketch where now I think because people were dogging on the anatomy, they fixed the leg anatomy a little bit more. So they made the leg larger and they drew in the head where again, now the sketch again looks weird. Because the head is done with such fine line work, where the line weight is so much thinner than the rest of the body. Where again, it's like very odd, and you don't often find artists who will draw like this, man. Who will make the line art for only the head really thin and really fine, and the rest of the body with a much thicker line art. And people were not buying it at all. This viral quote retweet says, sometimes following AI art discourse is funny because you see people who are clearly using AI not understanding how art works, so they end up embarrassing themselves completely. And those 2 speed paints cracked open the internet suspicions of being like, dude, okay, something looks really off here. And they delved into more of this artist's work. This was an older piece they posted May 2nd, which also they write work in progress first commission. So for more context about this artist, they were talking on their page that they haven't posted any drawings and they only started posting artwork in like May. So all of their followers were like, oh, I didn't know you knew how to draw. And they're like, I draw sometimes. So again, this is also an artist who we have no public visible history of past artwork to see like a progression because they've only been posting in like May, maybe like beginning of April or something. This is a traditional piece they posted, which is like a silhouette of somebody walking and you can see Luffy in the bottom corner. Just remember that because we will revisit that. Let's go back to the REM drawing where the artist, by the way, actually deleted the REM drawing off their page because of this post. And this user writes, LMAO AI image. The biggest giveaway is the weapon LOL. In the original piece, the flail is smashing into the wall and creating debris behind it. But here, the AI mistakes the destruction effect as part of the weapon itself, creating chains on both sides. So this is the original image where, as you can see here, the flail is hitting into the wall. So this is Rem's weapon. Rem uses this like massive chain with this like spiked ball at the end, and it's hitting the ground here. And also OP added this as the original drawing. Sorry, had a video break from my cat because he was breaking the door down again. But yeah, this was the original drawing posted by ReZelos, which is the mobile game for ReZero that shut down in 2023. But as you can see in the full drawing, Rem has that chain with the spiked ball at the end and it's hitting the wall. And here, looking at the side by side, you can see in the AI piece, it makes it look like the chain or the weapon is this like very cylindrical weapon and there's chains on both ends of it, which is wrong. And also in Rem's hair, there is a flower with 2 ribbons coming out of it and there's 3 in the AI piece. Yeah. And this was the piece that Divya had claimed to draw themselves. Another person added, even their traditional art is not theirs. This was a commission and they traced the other artist. So remember that pencil drawing that I showed you about the Luffy? Well, we have this one. But people commented that call out post about the REM piece under Divya's post, being like, how do you explain this? And Divya responds, how is that AI? I use the reference image, bruh. It's literally a publicly available image. People draw without reference. So they're literally claiming that they drew this themselves, even though the chain and the bows and stuff are completely mucked up. Nobody's buying that for a second, dude. But after all of that, their speed paint actually got community noted, where it says the artist's previous work include AI-generated images, such as the REM illustration where wall debris was misinterpreted as extra chains on the flail and traced traditional drawings. And the other community note says, time-lapse videos can be fake using AI tools that generate simulated drawing processes from final images. And Divya adds, community notes, time-lapse video can be made using AI. If any of you can make a fake AI-generated 3-minute time-lapse video like this and post it here, I'll believe anything all of you has ever said. Which, on a side note, I actually don't think this video, this painting process is AI generated. I think they actually drew this themselves and that this genuinely is their skill level for art, which is fine, but that this clearly is not what they were showing with their other art pieces. Because as you can see with this speed paint here, where they draw in the Luffy head, you can tell that this is a speed paint of somebody who is not fully confident or fully experienced with the drawing program they're using. Basically, they're drawing the entire sketch on one layer and then erasing more scuffed versions of their earlier sketches to draw more of the other sketch on top of it. Which again, that's totally chill if that is your art process, but that's not the most common thing you would see with artists. Typically, they would just make another layer on top of it and then clean up the sketch on the new layer without having to constantly erase and redraw. But that's fine if that's how you want to do it, right? But regardless, the anatomy, everything, the posing, the line work, that does not look like any of their other artworks. And the final thing that people were pointing out with this artist is that they were dropping fully rendered pieces like every other day, maybe like every 3 days, okay? And all of a sudden it's taking them a really long time to make this time lapse. So people are like, why is it taking you so long to drop a full time lapse of a fully illustrated image when you were making them so fast earlier? And that is another tell of, okay, is this person using AI or legitimate? If they're dropping fully rendered works that should be taking 8 to 10 hours, like literally every day, because either they're burning themselves out or they have a massive backlog, which this artist doesn't seem to have one because they have no previous examples of their work. It's interesting, it's suspicious, maybe they just have a lot of free time. But what are your thoughts on this entire situation? Because this most definitely to me is somebody who was AI generating some images, trying to pass it off as legitimate, and then got caught and tried to back it out with a speed paint that was not clearing their name at all. So again, don't send hate to any parties involved, but I thought this was just a funny situation. So with that, if you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. I just was at EDC. That was my first EDC this weekend. It was so fun. My favorite set was Subtronics. I had a really good time. So if you guys went, let me know in the comment section below too. And who is your favorite artist at EDC? Which was your favorite set? Again, mine was Subtronics, but there was like a crazy drunk guy that like somebody shoved into my friend and I, and we kind of got knocked back by that. And we were like, dude, what? Let me just vibe in peace. But yeah, check me out at Etsy. I have digital art there for streamers and creators. I also have a coffee with free resources, like a free sponsorship guide if you're a creator, and I stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. and Thursdays at 7:30. So I hope to catch y'all there or in another video. Peace.